Welcome to Who's New in Madison's Diversity in Madison. This morning, we have our special guest, Arvina Martin, who is, can you believe it? It's what, 8 o'clock there in San Francisco, Arvina?
It is.
So she was kind enough to uh, say she would join us, even though she was going to be out of town. Now, the question is, why did I ask Arvina to talk with us? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, Arvina is the first Native American individual to serve on the Common Council, to also be an alder. And certainly her journey there is fascinating. So Arvina, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm only going to ask that you do spend some time when you get to that part of your story talking about CARES, and then on to Emerge. So welcome, and the screen is all yours.
Thank you. Yes, well, hello, everybody. My name again is Arvina Martin. Ho-chunk rajra, ho-hamchi kerewinga hingaire. That means my Ho-chunk name is Ho-hamchi kere, which means the lightning in the distance. And I am a member of the warrior clan of the Ho-chunk Nation. I'm really happy to be with all of you this morning and from San Francisco, California at 8 a.m. Um, yeah, I got an email from Pat a while back asking if I would come and you know, I I don't know how you guys do questions or anything like that, but like if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. Don't have like a formal presentation planned. I thought it would be better just to kind of talk, less formal. And yeah, so yes, as Pat said, I was the first Native American person. People always want to say the first Native American woman, and while that is true, I am also the first Native American person, male or female, to be elected to Madison's Common Council, and so far the only. But I'm very much looking forward to the time where we have another and maybe several elders who are Native or of Native descent. I firmly believe that there was a lot of things that I saw from a different angle because of my heritage and my culture and the way been or I was raised. And I think it's really important for especially legislative bodies, but governmental bodies in general to be diverse. And when I say diverse, I think sometimes people say, well, you're diverse. Well, I am of the opinion that a person can't be diverse. Groups of people can. But so I really firmly believe in having diverse groups of people in governmental bodies, because if we all have the same experiences, the same culture, the same, we're brought up the same way, we all will have the same blind spots. And then those blind spots are places where that legislative body it doesn't know about and can't cover. When we have people with diverse experiences, cultures, belief systems, we get different blind spots and we're able to kind of cover each other's blind spots. So we are able to make better decisions for the communities that we serve and are able to help more people. And to me, the goal of government is to do the most good for the most people. So to me, it's having diversity in our governmental bodies is not just you know, good policy. Well, it's good policy. And it's I really firmly believe that those are the bodies in which we get the best decisions from. Um, I'll go right into the CARES program. The CARES program. So when I was elected, I was the only new alder that was elected. Everybody else was running for reelection and won. And when I did my orientation with the city, it was just me meeting with heads of departments across the city. It was kind of overwhelming because you had like 2 weeks to do it. Um, and you started like you heard and started planning the day after election day. You start getting emails saying, okay, what times are you available? So you really feel like you're being thrown into it right away, which is fun. But that meant that I got to spend a lot of one-on-one time with city department heads and got to find out, you know, I feel like that my orientation again was less formal as well. So I got to ask a lot of questions, questions about how things worked at the city level, who did what departments were in charge of A, B, and C, and how they all work together. But I also got to ask questions about like, well, what do you think is um what am I trying to say? What do you think could be improved, in your department? What do you need help with in order to do your jobs to the best of your ability? And I sat down with then Fire Chief Steve Davis, and we actually spent a lot of time talking about things. I had a lot of questions about firefighting, about the responsibilities of the fire department because they handle things more than just fires. They handle a lot of public safety, a lot of public health things, and while those were things that I kind of knew, it wasn't that I knew them solidly and kind of intuitively. So I asked a lot of questions, and one thing that Steve that Chief Davis, I wanted to call him Coach Davis for a second, but he wasn't my coach. That Chief Davis brought up to me was a program out of Oregon. Called Cahoots. And Cahoots is a program, it's the first mental health ambulance and mental health system of its kind, and really, really formed the basis for what ended up being the CARES program. That program, along with the STAR program from Denver, Colorado, we looked at those both quite extensively to figure out what we could, things that we could crib in order to be create a similar program in Madison that would work in Madison, because the needs in Eugene, Oregon and Denver are different than they are in Madison. And we also have different state laws and things that we had to comply with that weren't necessarily present in those two programs. But what they did was they saw a need for a different kind of mental health care, especially in terms of crisis mental health care. People that were experiencing either a mental health crisis or an AODA emergency, especially people that were, as some people refer to them as frequent flyers, people that have, ongoing issues, and frequently have emergencies. You know, a lot of their loved ones felt very uncomfortable calling the police because the police show up and they're wearing uniforms and they have guns. And, despite how, caring they can be and how good at their jobs they are, even the presence of a uniformed officer as well as an officer with a gun can really escalate a situation and make it more dangerous. And a lot of people hesitated to call 911 because they didn't want to further traumatize their loved ones, and in a situation where they were already in crisis. So what the Cahoots program and the STAR program and the CARES program do, is basically triage these calls. So if you had a loved one that maybe, wasn't in a good spot and you haven't heard from them in a few days, maybe you want to do a well person check on them. But again, don't want to escalate a situation with uniformed officers. You can call 911, and the 911 dispatch operators have been trained to triage things. And when a call comes in like that, maybe for a check welfare, or somebody's having a hard time and needs assistance, they can send, what we have in Madison is teams of two, and they are social workers, and mental health paramedics. So they have care, they have the training to help in medical emergencies, but they also understand the system and are able to then follow up with that patient for services that they may need, so people aren't falling through the cracks. And these folks come in and they aren't, I think they have, like, they are uniformed, but not in the same way that police officers are. I believe they probably have like something like t-shirts or something like that. Similar to how Madison Fire has their uniform underneath all of their gear. And they are able to come in and then further assess the situation, and hopefully come out. The goal is obviously to have the patient receive the best care possible, both in the moment, but also follow-up care. And this program, you know, when Chief Davis and I talked about it, I was reminded of a time where I have a friend who has struggled with alcoholism, and I've had to make those calls and try to decide whether um, I wanted, weighing the options as to, do I is it important for me to check and make sure that they're still alive, or risk them being further traumatized by law enforcement. And that is it's a really hard decision to make. So I very much, when he brought this up, was very much like, this is great. I love this idea. And he actually told me, Chief Davis did, that when he started, or when he started and would talk to new alders during their orientation about a potential mental health ambulance service, that he didn't get any real response, or that people were just like, oh, okay. And that I was the first person that showed actual interest in doing something like that. So we kind of, weren't sure how it was going to be, how we were going to do it. I was first elected in 2017. And so that was when I had my time with Chief Davis and talked about this. And it wasn't until 2020, during the pandemic, when when George Floyd was killed. And we were seeing people, organizing and protesting and being out in the streets, upset about what happened to him. And Chief Davis called me and was like, I think now's the time that people are going to see this, and see this as a way to get away from, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, kind of like pathologize, but with law enforcement, getting somebody into the system, is never what we want to do. And so we spoke about it and put together a team, and it took about another year for us. It actually happened very fast. And to say that it took a year and that was fast, kind of says something. But we worked across city departments, between the fire and police department. We worked with county level officials to work on, training for the dispatch office to be able to properly triage things, and to make sure that people, because we have a lot of health and mental health services that are provided at the county level so that we weren't duplicating services, but being able to get people to existing services. So we worked that year. City staff did an incredible job of reaching out to both Eugene, Oregon and Denver, Colorado to find out how they do things. In Denver, they have it so, people are providing medical care right there. And in Madison, we end up doing a lot less straight up medical care and more just mental health things. And we were able to put together a program that worked with Wisconsin's laws because there are a lot. And, if somebody before the CARES program, if somebody was having a hard time and needed to be hospitalized or needed to be put into care, that it would take a pair of officers all of the time that the person was in the emergency room, that they are off the streets and unable to be patrolling or whatever their other duties are. They also have to then, if that person needs further care, drive them up to Winnebago, which is a multi-hour drive. And so, is that the best use of resources? Well, probably not. And so we were able to switch that to our community and mental health paramedics and social workers. And so they were able to handle these cases and kind of take it off the plate of the police department. And when we started the CARES program, we were only, we treated it like a pilot program, and we had services, we studied and researched to find out when the majority of these calls were being made so that we could have because we didn't have the funding to provide this service 24/7 citywide. So we took a look at where these calls were coming from and found that the majority were coming from the Isthmus area during normal business hours. So we started our program with 2 teams that were that served primarily the Isthmus area. And within a year, the program grew to be citywide. And that's remarkable to me, the amount of growth. And for a certain group of people who, the only concern they have is how much money does it cost? This a mental health ambulance program like this actually costs substantially less and takes costs down because it takes costs away from the police department, and takes away a lot of those man hours where people are just kind of standing around and waiting with people. So this actually saves a lot, like a substantial amount of money. I can't remember the actual total when we started, but it does make fiscal sense in addition to being, a humane and kind of, the right thing to do for our fellow humans. And the team has grown. I can't remember, I'm not sure how many, I've forgotten how many teams there are now, but they are citywide and are beginning to expand time that they are available to. So it's not just during business hours. But that is kind of the lowdown on the CARES program. It's been very successful. And I'm really proud to have been part of the team that brought a program like CARES to Madison. I really think that programs like these, community care, mental health care, is really important for us to have safe and healthy cities, and safe and healthy residents.
Arvina, I have to say, what attracted me to this is the first time I visited our jail in downtown Madison. I was told by numerous officers that people who had mental health issues, people who created issues on the street, or when families called, and they sent the police out, they brought the people to jail, and they were put
Mhm.
in solitary confinement for their own good. You know what that does to somebody who's already having a problem. Our previous sheriff tried very hard to get that changed, and as the jail question was visited over and over again, it was finally decided that solitary confinement was not the answer. So then what? And I have to say, Tony Robinson, who was acting out on the street, who, a kid, he was acting out on the street. He was high. And they called the police. And so they sent a police officer with a gun. Tony Robinson didn't have a gun, and Tony Robinson was killed by that officer. If we had had CARES, they never would have sent an armed officer, and maybe that situation would have been resolved in a totally different way. So I was delighted to hear that this program is in place in Madison. So thank you for that effort. I mean, just amazing.
Yeah.
And just for everybody else to know,
Yeah.
Merge Wisconsin, which is what you are, the chief executive officer, is something I had never heard of, and I don't know that anybody else has either. It was a surprise. How did you find out that this existed, and how did you sign up for it?
So Emerge, well, first, Emerge is an organization that trains women, Democratic women and non-binary folks who feel comfortable in female-centered spaces on how to run for political office. We all hear the statistics about, it takes so many times for a woman to be asked to run for office before she does, whereas a man will just decide he's going to run. That women need on an average of like 7 or 8 qualifications out of 10 before they think that they're qualified for the job, whereas men will think closer to like 3 out of 10 and be like, I'm qualified. So what we do is empower, well, first identify women who are leaders in their community, who want to run for office. And then we identify them, we empower them with information, and we run about a 6-month training that will give our participants all of the tools that they need in order to run a successful campaign. So we talk about things like messaging, like how to tell your own story, how to tell your story in different ways. If you have like 30 seconds, if you have 5 minutes, if you have an hour, talking like that, because public speaking is still a big fear for a lot of people. So we do go over that kind of, public speaking quite a bit. We talk about things like raising money and how to do that, whether it's through events or emails or call time, the importance of raising money, because that's one of the 3 resources that you have on a campaign. And money is one that you can get more of, as opposed to the other. Well, you can get more people. The three are money. The 3 resources are money, people, and time. And you can always find more money and people, but also working on time limits, because time is the most valuable factor in a campaign and you never get more. It's always, the date is set and it's a countdown until then. So we teach them things like that. We teach them how to plan, okay, if I want to win, I need to shoot for this number of votes, this many votes. And if I want to get this many votes, I need to talk to this many people. If I need to talk to this many people, this is how many attempts at a door or on the phone that I need to make. So there's actually quite a bit of campaign math that comes into it. Much to my own math challenged self, I get stressed out when it comes to math. So I've always have somebody else lead that particular training portion. But and making it so that you feel prepared, that the person comes out feeling prepared, knowing what they need to do, but also having contacts with people. And that can be other Emerge alums. We have over 350 alums in the United States, or I mean, not in the United States, in Wisconsin. And so that network is really close knit. But they also get access to people that, like, we have folks that do campaign work come in and lead trainings so that they then learn about they learn who to talk to as well as what to ask them for help. So yeah. Um, let's see. Sue, did you have a question?
Just, just want to report that I know of a candidate that went through Emerge. My sister, Kate McGinnity, you might know her. She went on after this programming to serve 4 years as a Dane County supervisor. So she made very good use of that training.
Yes,
And
yes.
it's
And Kate is
wonderful.
awesome. I'm actually going to see her
I
when I get
figured
back
you
to
would
town
know
on
her.
Friday. Yeah. Um, and the training works. In the elections in fall 2024 and spring 2025, Emerge Wisconsin candidates who ran at a win rate, sorry, of 90%, which is
Wow.
incredible. And I'm really proud of that fact that we have such solid alums, and they had the training, they know what they're doing, they're confident, and are able to go out and win the races that they set out to run for.
And not only run the races, but become real real help to their constituents. It's amazing.
Exactly. Exactly. And we talk about things like that, about like talking to constituents. Sometimes talking with constituents can be a little rough. I know if any of you guys are familiar with the show Parks and Rec, when the character Leslie Knope is at a public forum and they're all yelling at her, she says to whoever is sitting next to her, "Oh, they're not yelling, they're caring very loudly at me." So I frequently, when I was being yelled at, was because I tend to be a little sensitive and I take things personally. So that is not great for somebody who's in elected office. So I had to tell myself, they're not yelling at me, they're just caring very loudly. And that actually did make it easier to kind of deal with folks who were upset, is just to think of them as people who are struggling with something and need help. And are frustrated. And it's a lot easier to work with folks when you're thinking kind of like that. I discovered Emerge. I can't remember who I was talking to. Before we started, I lived in Arizona for about a year with my then husband and then baby daughter. And it was not good. And we ultimately divorced. I came right back to Wisconsin and was like, I need to find a job. I need to find something. I need to find something, but I want to find something in politics because that's what I want to do. So I found an internship with the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, and I was a communications intern. So I helped with things like writing sample letters to the editor. I helped with opposition research. Like trackers go to events and follow opposing candidates and record them. And so like I would transcribe those recordings, so we could kind of keep an eye and hear what they're saying, hear what the opposition is saying when they don't think we're in the room. And yeah, so I was doing things like that. And then Act 10 happened. And everything changed. And that happened while I was an intern. I ultimately, the recall started, and based on my previous work history of working with tribes and working with Native people and having connections across the state, they hired me as the Native outreach director for the recall. So I worked with Native communities to get them to sign the recall petitions, to get out to vote and to talk to people about why we wanted to recall Governor Walker. And so that kind of began my actual career of working in politics. And I came across a lot of women who were incredible, who all participated in this program called Emerge. And they would always, I would see them see each other and be like, it's my Emerge sister. And they'd give great big hugs. And every single one of these women were accomplished, were leaders, and were just really outstanding people that I wanted to know and I wanted to work with. So I ultimately applied in 2014 to the program and got in. I honestly didn't even think of like even going through the program. I kind of thought of it as, well, if I want to work in politics, this is a great way to learn how it all works, all of the nuts and bolts. And I honestly saw myself more as a behind the scenes person, like a campaign manager kind of person. And it wasn't until my alder, who at the time was Chris Schmidt, had to leave his role because his day job required more attention. And we're all from Madison. We know that elected officials that are in Madison tend to stay in office forever. So there's not really, it's not frequent that there are opportunities for an open seat to run for. And so I actually applied to be appointed, but one of the questions they asked during the application process that I don't know that they ask anymore, is if you plan on running for that seat for reelection, because at the time, the council did not want to gift somebody incumbency, because that that could be seen as putting the thumb on the scale. And so I said that, I don't know, if I were to do this job and I'm a good fit, for and I enjoy it and I'm a good fit for my constituents, I don't want to say I'm not going to run if I do a good job. And my constituents think I do a good job. So while I was going in, not necessarily thinking about, am I going to run for reelection? I was thinking, am I going to be the right person for this job? And not being, it felt premature to decide to run for reelection when I hadn't even done it yet. So they ultimately did not select me, but I ran it. And I wasn't sure if I was going to run. They ultimately appointed a former alder who had left office, and he kind of took care of the seat to finish out Chris Schmidt's term. And I lost my train of thought. Rats. So I wasn't sure if I wasn't sure if this was going to be something I did, but it was 2016 and I worked on, I did voter protection for the Hillary Clinton team in 2016. And when we lost, I remember the next day literally laying in the shower because I was so despondent. Like I couldn't even stand up in the shower. I'm sure we all can relate to when it happened last time, but now, there's a lot of similar feelings or worse feelings. And, I felt awful. And I like for a week kind of felt like that. And then I was like, you know what? There is this opportunity here to do something for my community. And I can either lay around, be depressed and watch Law and Order all day, or I can actually do something. So I decided to run. And ran in the end of 2016 and early 2017. And ultimately won. And I served for 5 years and was also the vice president for a year. And I ultimately I loved doing it. I loved being on city council. there's just something so rewarding about being able to directly help people. And whether it is, you know, they need a crossing guard somewhere, you know, something like that, getting a crossing guard for a street, or whether it is something as large as the CARES program, you know, being able to do something good for your community is always great. I like to say that I am a product of my community, and there's no way that I could have gotten to where I have gotten professionally without the support of my community and community members. So, you know, I knew that when I graduated from college, you know, I had been supported so strongly by folks in my education that I knew that it was my responsibility to use my education and my skills that I've learned through the help of community to then give back to that community. So I really, really liked it. The only problem is it's supposed to be a 20-hour-a-week job, and that is not sufficient to run a city the size of Madison. Is 20 hours a week from 20 alders. And I couldn't afford to stay in office much longer because I wasn't getting paid very much. And towards the end of my term, I was working 3 jobs at the same time. And so I spent most of my free time doing city council things, which was fine. I like doing it. But then having to go work a shift at a bartender, or then go work on, you know, making beadwork to sell so I can afford to, you know, buy my daughter new basketball shoes, things like that. And the position at Emerge Wisconsin, the executive director position, had opened up, and I applied and was ultimately hired, and got to the point where it was untenable to do all the jobs and to do them all justice. So I ultimately left city council, again, not because I wanted to or because I didn't like the work or was, you know, I mean, to be honest, I was probably a little burned out, but you know, we're used to that kind of thing, is going until we burn out, which may or may not be healthy, but you know, it doesn't mean we're not used to it and can do it ourselves if we want to. And ultimately stayed at Emerge because then I could afford to have one job. And it actually did help my mental health quite a bit to only have one job, and be able to actually have downtime. So, you know, my time on city council, was incredible. And I am glad I've had the opportunity to give back to my community, like I said. So that is kind of how I got to Emerge. A little more about our organization is we are a nationwide organization. We have affiliates in 27 states. And some of our our organization was founded in 2003 by a group of women who had spent that year working to elect a woman to the San Francisco district attorney's office. And she won, their candidate won, and they're like, we should do this. You know, this should be a thing. There is a need, and this is something that is completely doable. That woman that they got elected was Kamala Harris. So we like to refer to Kamala as our first alum. I've had the opportunity to meet her a couple of times, and the first time I met her was in like a photo line, and they announce your name and your title to her. And so she can say hi and you take a picture and then you kind of go on. Well, they introduced me, Arvina Martin, executive director of Emerge Wisconsin, and the sitting vice president of the United States did an excited hop and quick clapping and said, "Yay, Emerge, I love you guys." And then started talking to me and was like asking me questions. So what was probably, you know, for most people, and I was expecting an opportunity for like 30 seconds to like share the same space with her. And she asked me questions for a couple of minutes. And I was just like, I was a little shocked and kind of didn't know what to do. But tried to answer her questions and tried to like, you know, I was clearly excited and everything. And talk to her, you know, make myself sound intelligent and not just like a fangirl. And it was awesome. And we, you know, have incredible alums across the country. Congresswomen like Latifah Simons and who is also from California, as well as Lucy McBath, who is from Georgia, I think. And you know, she had been an activist for against gun violence. I believe she lost a child to gun violence. Former secretary, and hopefully future governor of New Mexico, Deb Haaland, is an alum as well. And that she in particular is a big hero of mine because she's Native and has broken all kinds of barriers. And in Wisconsin, some of our alums include Dane County Executive Melissa Agard, State Senator and leader of the Democrats in the state Senate, Diane Hesselbein, Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, and we have women at you know at municipalities across the state, as well as state electeds, and we are working to get our first congressional candidate, first congressional candidate winner, first federal seat holder, for Emerge Wisconsin. That would be incredible. But again, this is all work that gets done. You know, I may run the organization, but a lot of it is dictated by what the alums want and need. You know, whether that means we do continuing education trainings, like we are working on a training right now about campaign safety, about being safe while you're knocking doors and making phone calls, and how to protect yourself. And you know, things like changes in digital campaigns. You know, campaigns aren't static, and we need to be on top of best practices all the time. And so our trainings change every year, because we want to make sure that we're at the cutting edge, that we do have the best practices, and that we're not steering anybody wrong. So I don't know, does anybody have any questions about either Emerge or my time on city council or CARES? Yes, Barbara. Oh, you're still muted.
Okay,
There
I
you go.
know. I hit some wrong buttons. So I was interested back to your city council time. You've talked about your passion for CARES. Could you share a couple other areas where you had great interest or impact during your service?
Yeah, so in 2018, we had those terrible floods. And while the isthmus got a lot of attention because the lakes were flooding, we had in my district, so I represented an area kind of by Hilldale, and there was a lot of flash flooding that night. Um, that night of the rains that were absolutely devastating to my constituents. There was a short, like a cul-de-sac street that was like maybe a block long. And every single house on that street like had their entire basements flooded. You know, the majority of them lost appliances. You know, several lost cars, I mean, furniture. And, you know, there was a lot that needed to be done. And I actually, you know, had heard about it. And so I went down to that street myself and was like, you know, I'm your older. I just wanted to see what was going on, to see how I can help. You know, I'm going to, you know, check with our engineering department, as well as, you know, other government entities to make sure that you guys are all able to access funding to repair your homes. There was a family whose home was not livable for at least 3 years because of the flooding. So like we're talking major structural damages. And you know, I had to I bothered my state legislators to encourage and bother then Governor Scott Walker on making a what am I trying to like on declaring an emergency because my constituents weren't going to be able to access funding from anybody like FEMA without a declaration of emergency in our area. And it took several days to do that. So we fought for that. And I unfortunately butted heads with then Mayor Soglin quite a bit because there were those floods exposed a lot of the weaknesses in our city stormwater management that were not up to what we could be experiencing. They weren't up for this kind of flood. With climate change, we are likely to have more floods that are major. And we needed to work on those, and that needed to be fixed at the city level with infrastructure changes. And so I worked for months and asked the mayor if we could put some of these changes into the budget, and he told me no. So I made, I worked with the city engineering department to make changes and amendments to the city budget, and we passed those budget amendments to improve our infrastructure so that we could prevent this from happening again or at the same level. So I'm really proud of being able to respond in an emergency and then work on the long-term solutions that we needed to do in order to prevent it from happening again. That was a really big deal. Something on a smaller scale that I'm proud of was changing the city flag. The city flag used to have what is called a Zia sun symbol, which is a very sacred symbol to the Zia Pueblo people of New Mexico. And when the young men who designed the flag they just saw that it was native and they're like, oh, okay, we'll put this on here. And it looked good. The Madison City flag is frequently listed at the top of vexillological lists as being one of the best city flags in the country. And I didn't want to change that. The flag was great. I just wanted to take the appropriation out because, there aren't Zia Pueblo people in Madison. There's no connection. And we shouldn't be using their sacred symbols. So we just took that out and added a gold colored disc in the center instead. And we're able to keep an amazing flag and symbol of our city while taking out cultural appropriation that wasn't needed. And the flag remains popular. Like you can buy merch with it on, which I think is really cool. So, and that is something that other alders might not think of because they're not native. They haven't experienced that kind of cultural appropriation. Whereas that was something that I knew about and had experienced. So being able to change that and again, keep the spirit of what the flag represented, plus having it still look really great while taking out something that didn't belong to us was pretty important to me as well. But not on the same scale as like CARES or helping the folks who had been flooded. Those I think are my 3 proudest accomplishments are those 3. Yeah. Yes.
I have 2 questions,
Okay.
Arvina. One is, Well, the first is to say thank you for explaining exactly what alders do, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I've always been curious about what exactly they're responsible for. And I see that now from what you
Mhm.
said. The city council also, I always wonder, yes, we have the mayor, and what does the city council tell them and how does it all work? So I have a better picture now from what you said. But I do have a question about Emerge, the national organization. How is it funded?
Donations. We have to fundraise. So we have events. I am on the phone quite a bit trying to get donations so we can continue to run Emerge Wisconsin. We have a budget, we have our goals that we have to meet in order to then, all the states fundraise for themselves, but the national organization fundraises for themselves as well as for us, as well as for states. And the fundraising that they do supports other programs. Like we are we just opened applications for a nationwide program called Gavel In that is specifically for women that want to run for judicial seats, because there are specific considerations that judicial candidates need to make that other candidates for office don't need to. We also have our Seated Together program, which is for Black women who want to run, who are in office but want to run for higher office. And that's another national program. We also do programs like our Step Up program for women that are maybe at the beginning of their candidate journey and aren't sure if they want to do it. It's a short hour-long presentation that gets people thinking about what they need to think about, why they might want to do it. So we have programming at every levels, and that's what that fundraising supports. So whether it is from large organizations or from individual grassroots donors, we've got to do that whole strategy.
Yeah, that's amazing. For some reason, I thought it only applied to women who are interested in becoming alders. So I love that it's a much broader organization. And how long, it's been 20 years now?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, some folks came on. It is our 20th anniversary. And I'm in San Francisco right now because we are having our 20th anniversary gala, which is a big fundraising event, and I'm here to help out with that. And we are going to have Kamala Harris will be giving remarks, and this will be her first major speaking event since the election. So not only do we get to hear from her, this is her first kind of foray out post-election. So I'm very excited. We're also going to have alums from across the country. One being Mallory McMorrow from Michigan, who, if you don't know of her, get to know her. She is likely to be the next congresswoman from Michigan, and she's incredible. And there's so many. There's just I'm always in awe of the stories and the kinds of women that I encounter through this work. And when things get tough and when things get hard, like sometimes we have a training weekend and it's going to be I'm going to be training for 8 hours on Saturday and Sunday. And I'm like, I'm tired, this is a lot. But every time I do it, I feel like my cup is being filled, because it's so incredible to see these amazing folks and the amazing things that they put into the world, and the incredible work that they do. Our current class, we have 8 members in our current class, and 3 of them are social workers. So it's yeah, and do work in mental health. So we don't have just like the standard, it's going to be people that want to go into politics. It's all attorneys and people that majored in poli-sci when they were in college. It takes all kinds. Our communities need all kinds, and it really does, make me feel better about the world to see everything that people affiliated with our program do. It's just, it makes me feel less alone in the fight. And especially now when everything seems, we have 40 things thrown at us that are terrible. It is great to see the impact that these women and non-binary folks are having in their own communities, because even like our class last year was small. And but everybody in that class has now either been elected to office or have taken on leadership roles in organizations that they participate in. So we have a woman, or we have a non-binary person that works in the UW like STEAM, like this steam power something, she's or they're a tradesperson, and they are, took on a larger role in their union. And so, people are using the things that they learned and building their confidence and everything to make those differences happen, even without being in office, which again just warms my heart.
Well, I'm sure I speak for many of us, and for many of us who aren't on today, the fact that women can talk to each other on a level that men never seem to be able to. And the strength of women supporting women is one of the joys of being female, quite honestly. There's always someone to turn to. I really love this organization. I had no idea it existed until I read about you. So thank you so much. I've learned a whole lot this week, and I'm sure we all have. Thank you.
Yes, and you can, if you have any other questions, you can send me an email. Pat has my email. It is arvina@emergewi.org. But you can get it from Pat if you want to talk more, or want to run for office, or if people that should be a part of our program, or if you want to donate. You can go to our website, wi.emergeamerica.org, and you can give there to help support the work that we do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I will send that out to everybody. So look for it, because I'm looking at
Yes.
all of the people who are here, and I can name at least 4 of you who should be running for office. So, age is not a barrier, is it?
No. I mean, we need all different kinds of experiences, and ages, are part of what contribute to our experiences. So
Great.
yeah.
Thank you again, Arvina. I hope
You're
you'll
welcome.
pick a
And thank
number
you
of
for having me. I appreciate you all taking out your time from your day to hear me and hear about our programs and the things that I've been able to do.
And I know you had to get up early and be, on, because you're 2 hours different. So have fun in San Francisco this week, and congratulations to Emerge.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yep.
And ladies, I am going to send out